Hey guys, today I'll be making a fully bioactive Crested Gecko vivarium. To start this build, I first had to remove any of the unwanted decorations. I ended up reusing the wood and one of the ledges for the future build. I wanted this build to stay simple, so I didn't use any silicone or spray foam, and I didn't create any custom background. I should also mention that I got a Crested Gecko. The enclosure came with the Crested Gecko, and though it's a fine enclosure, I decided to make it bioactive as I prefer naturalistic bioactive habitats. After I removed everything, I added the substrate. I kept the base layer of cocoa fiber as it provides a familiar scent for the Crested Gecko. I decided to go with Terrafauna by the Biodude. It is a great substrate for tropical use and would work well with this setup. After adding the substrate, I messed around with the hardscape. This is one of the most important parts of designing an enclosure. I tried not to use any unnatural elements, but I decided that this gecko ledge would be a great way to add height and to build up the hardscape. Finding the right hardscape took many iterations, but eventually I found one that worked. I ended up altering the final design of this enclosure. Without these added changes, I think the enclosure would have been a lot less interesting. After figuring out the hardscape for the most part, I added the plants. I added a small monstera that I will end up having to remove in the future. I then added the final pieces of wood. These are 2 sagebrush branches that I found in Montana. They were thoroughly disinfected, and I think they add a lot of life to the enclosure, as they are like hands reaching out through the undergrowth. They also double as a great perch for the Crested Gecko. I then added the rest of the plants. Here's a small umbrella plant I added to have more texture and to fill up empty space. To add the plants, they must be thoroughly disinfected. Mine were in quarantine for several months before I added them. To add them, you must remove all debris and dirt within their roots. This is so it doesn't add any fertilizer or anything that can poison your animal into the enclosure. I knew I needed a final plant, but the final plant I chose did not fit anywhere in the enclosure. But instead of not adding it, I wrapped the roots in sphagnum moss so I could place it anywhere in the enclosure. I ended up placing it in the middle and is a great centerpiece for the enclosure. And with some final adjustments by moving around the cork, I finished with the hardscape and the plants. I was then able to add the leaf litter. By adding the fold leaves on top, this helps keep in the humidity in the soil, allowing for water retention. For the cleanup crew, I added powder orange isopods and tropical springtails. After a light spraying and a quick watering, the enclosure was ready. I sprinkled the old substrate on top of the enclosure so the gecko would have a familiar scent. After that, it was time to add the gecko. This is my new gecko. She is a female, and her name is Lola. And with that, the enclosure is finished.